What's up, everybody? Welcome to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., Jesse Cofield holding it down for us in the Boston studio here. We are brought to you by Wrangler, made for the ride of life. Save 15% on your first Wrangler.com order with promo code GOJO15. Got a great show for you guys coming up today. One that we're very excited about here. We have got Kansas Jayhawks head football coach Lance Leipold stopping by the show today. We have got former NFL offensive tackle Andrew Whitworth getting us ready for Thursday Night Football tomorrow. And, Dad, one that I know you and I are both very excited about here. Longtime friend of the show, all-around great person. And tonight, Celebrity Jeopardy contestant Katie Nolan hanging out with us today here. It is, I tell you, we got bangers ready for you every day. But this one goes above and beyond, Dad. For you, I know especially, obviously, pumped to talk to Lance Leipold. He's a great guy, done a phenomenal job with that Kansas program. Big Wit's former beef, so we love to stand that around here. But you spent a lot of time watching Jeopardy in your guys' house. I know you and Mom, Jake, my brother, and his wife, Jenny, watch a ton of it. And to see someone living out a dream that so many of us have is going to be just exceptional content tonight.
I am so looking forward to this because we all sit there and watch game shows and want to be on it and yell at people when they don't get an answer that we all know and we think it's easy. Because I remember we had Anthony Anderson on talking about he hosted some, but also played in some, and the difference of obviously sitting at home and then being there when the pressure's on of getting an answer out quick or hitting a buzzer quick, wondering if you could do it. Now, the thing with me about Jeopardy is I could get asked to do this if I never would. I wouldn't do this. There is no shot. I would do like Wheel of Fortune or something like that. Jeopardy, unless it was like, not even Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader Jeoperdy, because I would probably think it is
Celebrity Jeopardy.
I don't care.
Easier.
Mike, I don't care. I would get so found. I think I'm pretty smart until you have to be smart quickly. And then that adds a whole nother layer and of that pressure. So God love Katie for this. I can't wait to the chat with her. I can't wait to see this tonight. So I'm very excited about that. I wanted our family to be on Family Feud.
Yeah, that'd be the one.
I would love that.
Oh, that would be amazing content.
Yeah.
Well, because it would tear us apart. We would absolutely fold at the seams because we like to all think we're really good at Family Feud. Dad's point about the TV brain and what it does to you watching at home. We think we'd be good, and then we'd get to Fast Money, and there would be the argument about who we would send out in Fast Money. And then there's only downside once you get there, because if you are the reason that we don't win because this is hyper competitive and that's how we rock, you're never going to live that down for the rest of your life. Any argument within the family group chat for the rest of time is going to end with, we lost Family Feud because you didn't know how best to describe your spouse coming out of the shower, or whatever category horny Steve Harvey gives us.
Wow. There you go. I like that a lot.
They would do something with you guys sharing bathwater for sure.
Oh yeah,
100%.
Without question. But I mean, the wackiest part of that show to me is, and they must tell you to do it, no matter any answer given, they tell you to clap and say good answer. We would break that rule. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Especially if Sydney was on the program, because we would try and push Sydney off and get her husband Ben on, right? That would be the first.
He went to Harvard.
We were trying Harvard, and he's in med school. I mean, how do you not have him on the team? But if you give a dumb answer, they would have to beep us out. We wouldn't be saying good answer. We'd be like, what the hell did you just say? How dumb was that? So,
I'd also only walk in there with one goal, which is to get the Steve Harvey face. That far away, disappointed face where he looks off at the mic, because you've either said something so cosmically dumb, like name a name that starts with the letter H, where a guy confidently hit the podium and said Jose, and Steve Harvey was apoplectic, or the face that he makes anytime a person over 60, which quite honestly, balls in your court on this one, and this feels like right up your alley. But anytime someone over 60 says something horny, Steve Harvey absolutely is lost and so concerned about the state of humanity. And that would be my goal, to say the thing that got him there. But I do feel like you're more in the demo that he usually reacts to.
I would say something dumb, but that would be if I went alone somewhere, it would be Wheel of Fortune. But I think I would like the family aspect of Family Feud. I think that would be cool. But looking forward to talking with Katie and seeing her tonight on the show. That it's one thing to watch it. It's another thing to watch it when you know somebody. But also, how about on the sports side? We now officially have 3 major sports going. As hockey dropped the puck last night for real. It was awesome to start that season. You had another banner raise in Vegas for the Golden Knights. That's always a cool thing to see. Even better when you win after you do something like that.
Did you see the Vegas Golden Knights in their banner raising? This is the most college football stuff I've ever seen, and I felt like this is right up your alley. On the ice, they had a giant slot machine.
Yes,
and they had
did.
One of the players go over and pull the lever, and instead of, triple bar or anything on there, it was triple Stanley Cups, and then they raised the banner. And Vegas has leaned all the way in. You've seen the pregame stuff that they've done around there. It's very on brand for them right now. But I looked at that and I realized, the Las Vegas Golden Knights are a college football team in the way they process things, and I love it.
It's awesome. Their opening is awesome. Their pregame is awesome. It's a great show. And like you said, they've leaned into it, and Vegas has leaned into sports, as they should, which is so amazing because of how taboo it's been. I was talking to a local station out there before I called the Vegas and Green Bay game on Monday night. And that's one of the things we talked about is just talk about a 180 of Vegas was taboo, to sports. No, you can't have athletes anywhere near there, to now you can't get enough teams. We got the Aces there. You're going to have baseball there. You got football there. You got hockey there. You can't get enough sports there now. And like we all thought, it's thriving. Not all the pro athletes didn't turn into degenerates and go hang out, and you got to go find them at the blackjack table like everybody was fearing, or making bets here and there secretly. It's been fantastic.
They've been great for that. So we had that popping off last night. Basketball was going on last night. We've got Texas Rangers go ahead and punching their ticket, sending home the 100-win Baltimore Orioles last night. The Rangers now undefeated in their postseason. And, Dad, I need to tell Jason Fitz to suck it right now because you have got the power of Creed on full display here in this moment. The Texas Rangers, who had reportedly been fueled by playing Creed in their dugout, Creed in their locker room, had it blaring over the stadium last night as they went out there and blasted in this game. A 7-1 win to send the Orioles home in this game. You get Max Scherzer beer showers in the locker room. It was glorious all the which way, Dad.
It really was. And for Baltimore, how not glorious. A team that didn't get swept all season, and all of a sudden they get swept in the post. We'll talk about that and get into that more, but a nice sweep for them. It looks like they'll be facing Houston, who was up 3-1 in their series, or 2-1. Is it 2-1 and 3-1? I don't know. They're up. They're looking good. They're starting to take control of that series.
They're up 2-1 right now.
2-1. That's right. 3-1. It'll be over. So it's, as I said, 3 sports going now, with basketball on the horizon of starting in the regular season soon. So all is right in the world of sports.
Yeah, it's a lot happening at once right now. I do think we need more beer showers. I think seeing that after the game for Texas just reminds us there's always a good reason to go and get covered in beer with the homies. But
would you put the goggles on, though? Would you put the goggles on?
Yeah. It's a look now. Why wouldn't you? I don't want beer in my eyes.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I would put it on. I think I would just want the whole experience. My eyes burning and everything.
There's nothing wrong with using protection.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, make sure you put those goggles on. You never know what you might see in there. And what if something happens to your eyeball? You still got more games to play.
Right. You can't afford to get hurt. This isn't like if you want to go out there and go in without the goggles for winning the World Series, you got a whole offseason to recover after that. You don't got to worry about that. You need these eyes to work, hand-eye coordination. It's high-level stuff that's going on. This is the AL freaking CS. You don't want to be out here on IR because you had an extra Bud Light hit you in the retina.
Yeah, I get it, but I
look how hard that's coming into the face.
It's direct inject to the eyeballs there.
Yeah. Well, they're doing that because they got the goggles on. I don't know if they'd be doing that if they didn't have the goggles on.
Max takes the goggles off midway through this and just decides he wants to see the real thing.
He wants to fully. Well, that's the thing too. You got no windshield wiper on the goggles. All of a sudden, everything's blurred. You're not seeing anything. Yeah. Are you enjoying the celebration if you don't see it?
It looks like he's having a good time. Yeah. It looks like that is a nice way to be able to enjoy it without fear of anything happening to your peepers there. I don't know why he decided to try and feed his buddy beers directly through his eyes. Maybe that's what kids are doing now. I love to see it, though. So congratulations to the Texas Rangers who went out here and make it happen. Bruce Bochy, the Midas touch over in that organization. Yeah. 3 World Series of his own already, and now helping that. By the way, Dad, deep, dark, despicable, sad here before we move on to some football. I saw this tweet last night from Tyler Samsel, who writes, he is of DFW, The Ticket. 3 of 4 Dallas teams have now made the Final Four within the last 2 years. Not sure who the missing one is in terms of professional sports teams there. The Dallas Cowboys have had to watch the Rangers' ineptitude and live long enough to see them find their way back to this stage before the Cowboys have even sniffed anything of true value in the postseason.
How about that? The worst of the pro franchises down in Dallas. Take that one, huh? That's a tough call. That is a tough call. And coming off the whooping that they just took, the way they played there, the way San Fran played there, doesn't look like they're going to get to the Final Four. Well, they may get there. Maybe they'll get a rematch with them, but I doubt it.
Yeah, and as Deebo Samuel said yesterday in response to Micah Parsons, I don't know if you want that rematch. Yeah. I don't know if that's the life that you want to choose. So we will all hope we get that back in some form or fashion. But, Dad, NFL-wise, I want to get to something different. It happened right when we ended the show yesterday that you heard a coach unusually candid about the situation going on behind closed doors in Carolina. Frank Reich is in his first year as the head coach of the Panthers, and they're off to an 0-5 start, and things aren't looking great. And he stepped to the podium yesterday and talked about his owner, David Tepper, and his style of ownership in the building compared to some others. And I thought this was interesting. Take a listen.
There's different philosophies in ownership. You know what I mean? Some owners kind of stay away and don't engage a whole lot. Other owners do, and his philosophy is he's going to engage. And listen, it's only been a short experience, but it's been a really good experience. It hasn't been fun, you know. It's not fun. Those meetings aren't. I wouldn't characterize them as fun meetings, but those meetings make me better, and I trust they make us better. There's different philosophies in ownership. You know what I mean? Some owners kind of.
So, Dad, does that concern you at all? If you're a Carolina Panthers fan and you're hearing about your owner having weekly meetings with the head coach of the football team that sound like he's getting read the riot act, does that give you the warm fuzzies? Because we have these debates all the time about how involved and in what ways you want your owners to be in a professional sports team.
Well, I want my owner involved. See, it doesn't. The difference here is I want my owner involved, not necessarily making decisions. Right? Football decisions. I think I like an involved owner because I had the absolute opposite of that when I was in Philadelphia. Norman Brayman owned the team. That dude, not only was he not hands-on, he wasn't even around. He was gone a lot in France a lot. So, I mean, he would, but to a player, it doesn't matter. I mean, it depends on who you're talking about. Players don't care if the owners are around or not. Players would care if the owners are making football decisions and they're dumb football decisions, but that's why you hire coaches and GMs and the way you structure it to let them make the football decisions while you own the team. I'm happy an owner meets with a coach or a GM or whoever every single week to get the temperature. Listen, he's owned that team for over a handful of years now, and it's not gone well. So,
but wouldn't you say it hasn't gone well in part because this owner appears to be hyper aggressive and has cycled them through quarterbacks that ultimately did not help the team win, and that constant change in that position was definitely a net negative for the Panthers?
Well, I mean, is that on the owner or is that on the people that are picking the quarterbacks that aren't working? You know, unless the owner is the one picking that player that's not working, to me, that's on the coaches and the general manager. Mainly, you know, whoever is involved in picking personnel. That's who it's on. So to me, it doesn't sound like Tepper, you know, Jerry Jones. Remember, Jerry Jones had to get talked out of picking Johnny Manziel, so they made the right move and picked Zach Martin. You picked an old guard instead of a quarterback, not sexy, but you got a guy walking into the Hall of Fame. So that was a great move. So there has been trepidation at times of Jerry Jones' involvement because it's almost too much in some of the decisions that have been made. Tepper isn't like that. They went out and they spent some money on free agents, and the difference is now what I don't know is who was involved, because you heard Frank Reich like CJ Stroud. They took Bryce Young. Who's ultimate decision? Now, if that's on Tepper, then and it doesn't work.
Which the fact that that's out there at all as a leak or a report is pretty damning for what's going on inside that building.
I agree. I completely agree. So if that's the case, then that's more of an issue to me as well. You hire football people to make football decisions, but at the end of the day, he signs a check. So if he wants to step in and Bigfoot everybody, and I don't know that's what he did or if that's what's going on, but if that in fact is the case, and we don't know how it's going to end up right now. CJ Stroud obviously playing better. That team is doing better in Houston, but it's a long way off of knowing who won that with the early starting quarterbacks of Young and Stroud and Richardson, of who's going to be the best. So, but you hear they took Young and Reich wanted Stroud. So that would be a concern for me. I like ownership involvement, but not to the point of personnel decisions, because that's exactly why you hire football people to make football decisions.
Yeah, and I guess that's the only worry is if you've got someone who's this involved, and especially David Tepper, by all accounts, is a strong-willed, opinion guy. And so does that start to leak into some of the conversations around the football process? Because, Dad, one thing I saw in terms of Bryce Young, who you talked about here, is from Joseph Person, who covers the Carolina Panthers for The Athletic, talked about the juncture they're at with their season right now, 0-5, things really looking listless. And Bryce Young has struggled during his young career, put up some of his best numbers of the season this weekend, but still a bunch of mistakes that ultimately undermine the team performance. And he threw out the idea of one of the possibilities, things that could happen if the Carolina season keeps going the way it is. And he mentioned the idea of sitting Bryce Young down for a little bit. The offense looked its most explosive with Andy Dalton under center when Bryce was out with the ankle injury. Dad, would you see any benefit to sitting a young guy down early in this season? We know the thought with a lot of these young quarterbacks was get him on the field, let him make mistakes. We've seen it happen in the past. People bring up Aikman and Manning all the time. But is there anything to be gained with, hey, we know Bryce is going to be our guy in the future. He's having a really rough stretch right now. The team's really down right now. Is there a different vantage point that he could see if you put him on the sideline for a little bit and let him sort of collect himself?
Only if he looks lost and it looks like he's losing his confidence would I do something like that. Other than that, he's staying on the field and learning. I am one of those eyes watered, nose bloody, go ahead and get your experience. But that's to a point. Again, is he losing confidence? Is he making bad decisions? Is he regressing in what you see on film? It's not necessarily just don't look at the play, look at everything. How quickly is he recognizing coverage? Pre-snap, post-snap, throwing to the right guy. How's he throwing it? How's he leading? Those are the things that if he's waning on that and regressing on that, then maybe you'd step back and take a breath. But if it's just these are the speed bumps of being a rookie quarterback where he's doing the right things, seeing the right things, he's just not there yet, I leave him on the field. We know what this season's going to be for them. So as long as there's not the regression or the wide eyes or the lost feeling out there, he's staying out in the field as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, and I think that's it. And that's really on Frank Reich. If we go back to the central figure of this conversation, is he's got to be able to know, because I do think there is value in being able to take a breath and see things from a different vantage point when you've been going since the start of the season on a bad team. We know part of this is we've bemoaned the weapons in Carolina. We know he doesn't have a lot of receivers to help him out. We know that offensive line, especially going back to the preseason, hadn't performed as well, because it's that idea of practice makes perfect versus actually practice makes habit. And you worry about young quarterbacks early on in their career internalizing so many mistakes, so many bad football things, so many things, like you said, that are regression from what they know and what they've been doing in a positive way, that you worry about that seeping in too much too early and then tainting a young quarterback or affecting the way they develop there. I think there's value to it in the right circumstances, like you said. And I think that's on the coach to recognize, especially as relative to the rest of that locker room too, is it got to a point where he's so rattled, it's a net negative and everybody in that locker room can see it, and not doing something ultimately makes you look bad in front of that program. Back after this, it's GoJo and Golic here on the DraftKings Network. Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., and Jesse Cofield. Dad, we've got a host of teams that have gotten off to a real struggle of a start right now. A lot of 1-4 teams, the Patriots, Broncos, Giants, Bears, and Cardinals, all trying to right the ship this weekend. And one of the matchups that we have is, basically a loser leaves town. You've got the 1-4 Minnesota Vikings in a division game against the 1-4 Chicago Bears for this week. And two teams in very different positions in their life, Dad. Justin Fields and the Bears have a couple of games of promise to point to on offense, a win last week against the Washington Commanders. But for the Vikings now, with this Justin Jefferson news of him going on IR for the near future, and this idea that he's not going to rush back, doesn't want to re-injure this, that's part of why they're putting him on IR. Does this change the immediate future of Kirk Cousins, Dad? We've heard so many conversations about the potential trade value of Kirk Cousins, what teams might swing for him. Does news like this around Justin Jefferson, your team's best player, affect that conversation in any meaningful way for you?
Well, I mean, listen, even with Justin Jefferson, they're 1-4. So Justin Jefferson is not leading this team to the playoffs, unfortunately. Now, him being out, I mean, really kind of cements, I think, what the obvious already was, in my opinion anyway. So I didn't think Minnesota was going to get there anyway. So is just now saying, okay, this is the last straw that this happened. So let's move on from Kirk Cousins, which everybody is talking about. But Mike, that is and that's where we're going here, right? Because we've seen the trade deadline work now. As I've talked about years ago when I was doing shows, it was just a day that came and went. Nobody did anything. But we saw the effect of Christian McCaffrey. We saw the effect of TJ Hawkinson of going to other teams and being successful and then being with those teams. So here's the difference. If we want to sit there and trade or think about a trade of Kirk Cousins, which is very easy to say, right? Oh, they should trade that guy. It's the last year of his contract. Probably don't want to bring him back. You franchise him. That's too much money. So you're going to move on from him. So let's trade him. Let's get some assets for him before we move on. Great to say. You got to find a trade partner, because the one thing you don't see in the NFL is a one-year rental, right? We really haven't seen a lot of that. So where is Kirk Cousins going? Who's the trade partner? Everybody keeps saying, Jets, get him, Jets, get him. Well, you've got Aaron Rodgers that's going to come back next year. Are you going to bring Kirk Cousins in for a year, give up assets for him, and you're doing it only to make a playoff run? You're not bringing them in just to, solidify a team to finish out of the playoffs. You're bringing them in for a reason. What happens after that?
Oh, by the way, with a quarterback in Aaron Rodgers that didn't respond all that well last time competition got brought into his quarterback room. I'm with you, Dad, that the Jets would not be a team that I would put in that for that reason. No. But I would think a team that's a little bit more secure in their long-term answer at quarterback that's still in win-now mode could potentially be up there if an injury happens. Like, I do think this is something that only seriously gets broached if there's an injury that happens to someone who is a contender, who feels like they're in win-now mode, who has a late-season injury, or I should say an injury before the trade deadline,
right,
and feels like, hey, if we bring Kirk Cousins in for this one-year stopgap, we can give up some resources there, because I think you'd have to pay a pretty steep price tag to do this to make it work there. I was talking with Dominique Foxworth and his producer Charlie yesterday about a team like the Dolphins, a team like if the Bengals were to somehow get it rolling and then Joe Burrow gets hurt at the end of the season, and you feel like, man, if we just have an adult with two hands on the wheel. The 49ers from last year, if something were to happen to Brock Purdy, you look at where they were last season and say, hey, if they just had a quarterback, they're probably winning the Super Bowl.
Yeah, no, listen, I agree with that. So I guess that's the point now, is everybody so easily throws out trade for Kirk Cousins. Well, it's not that simple. It's just not. When you have to give up assets, and then what are you doing going forward? Like you said, in your scenario, if their sure star quarterback gets hurt, Kirk Cousins knows he's going into a situation where he's not going to be the quarterback of the future of that team. But again, you're still giving up assets for it. So I'm now, is that what we do? We just wait and see? Because it's amazing to me, the talk out there of trade him. And that's the easiest line in the world to say. Let's say there's no injury anywhere. Where are you trading him? Where right now, what team is going to trade for him?
Well, yeah, no, I don't think it's happening then. Like, I think that's one of those things where it would have to be a truly desperate team, and we don't have that yet at this point. And for the Vikings on the other side, unless you're offered a king's ransom, Dad, this is not the easiest thing in the world to consider. For you in a locker room, if you're a veteran player on that team and you see them trade the starting quarterback of your team, who you know is not going to be there next year, everyone can read the writing on the wall with that. But punting in the middle of the season like that, that's a tough thing to explain to your football team.
The only thing I'll say about that, Mike, is the players know the writing on the wall better than anybody. They know, they'll see it. If in fact we get to a trade, they're going to know they're not going anywhere this year. And well, the one thing that you have to be able to do is understand it's a business. So even if they didn't get a king's ransom, is something better than nothing. Because if you play out the season with Kirk and he's gone, you get nothing. You don't make the playoffs and you get nothing. Now, here's the other thing from a business side of it. If you trade away Kirk Cousins, again, you have to find a trade partner. We're assuming that, and it's a horrible thing to assume because I think it's going to be hard to do. Now, the worse you finish, what does also that mean? The better draft pick that you get. So that's, it's not the tanking that we talk about because, again, players never tank, but trade away. You got your wide receiver who's got a bad hammy, is going to miss 4 weeks. You're coming up on the trade deadline. Trade away your starting quarterback. Your season's probably not going to go well. You got something, even if you didn't get a king's ransom, you got something for him instead of nothing if you don't trade him. And, oh, by the way, you're in for a bad year and a higher draft pick. If Kirk Cousins is in the locker room or not, and they only win 4 or 5 games this year, if I'm a veteran, who cares? Who cares is at the quarterback position because you're not going anywhere anyway.
Yeah, well, I mean, especially now that they don't have Justin Jefferson for at least the next 4 weeks. You've paid TJ Hawkinson, which is great. You've got Jordan Addison that you drafted. None of this works without Justin Jefferson and the unholy amount of attention that he draws in that offense. They've been the most lopsided run-to-pass offense in the NFL. They've been an air raid assault that's now going to have a lot less fun. Dad, it was interesting, too. You brought up the team's hopes for the future. There was this idea that maybe Justin Jefferson not coming back right away could be a leverage play. There's the contract situation. He didn't get the payday this offseason. They didn't come to that deal type thing. And so would this be a leverage point there? I would look at that and say, if you're the organization, you want him healthy for the long term. One, selfishly, because you're going to pay him. That's going to end up being a reality. Whatever quarterback is under center for you next year is going to have their life made a ton easier with the presence of the best wide receiver in football. But also, like you said, the notion of, hey, we're going to be pretty bad this year. If we were a little bit more bad, not the worst thing in the world. So it kind of serves two masters for you to make sure, hey, Justin Jefferson, you take as long as you need to feel 100% healthy because it doesn't benefit us any which way to bring you back here any earlier than you need.
Absolutely does not. Not to bring him back and him to come back and him to tweak that again. No, you're going to pay him. I mean, this is one of the more obvious ones there is. He's going to get paid. Obvious ones. Jamar Chase is going to get paid. These guys are going to get paid. If not, if there's any kind of back and forth with the team, any kind of fan's going to say, what the hell are you doing, ownership? These are no-brainer signings. So you're right. You want him healthy. And again, along the way, if you can get him healthy, get something for Kirk Cousins, if you can find a trade partner, which is always the tough part, and then you may get a better draft pick the worse you finish. That's sometimes that's the season for you.
It's complicated for players because your whole livelihood is based on what goes on here. These are things that the upper crust of guys get to think about. Those are luxuries and rich people problems. For everyone else, a bad season could be damning. It could be the end of some guy's career based on how interconnected all of football is. And so it's always a really dicey proposition.
So you want to win. But when you see as a team, the team goal is to win. But when you see that may not be happening and you're worrying about yourself anyway, but the team is a big picture as well. Now you get to the point of, I am damn making sure my T's are crossed and my I's are dotted. It is for me. Am I in a contract year? Am I a fringe player? You got to worry exactly about what's going on for your future.
Yeah, and you've always brought this up. It a lot more is about the preparation than the product on the field, because once you get to the field, self-preservation takes over. The preparation during the week is where this can suffer. Speaking of preparation during the week, the Colorado Buffaloes may involve Travis Hunter soon.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Great news for Deion Sanders and co. out in Colorado. According to Deion, two-way star Travis Hunter has a tremendous chance to return Friday against Stanford after missing the team's past 3 games. Here's what he had to say about the chances.
There's a tremendous chance he could play. It goes by how he looks, how he performs in practice, how his wind. He has to be in shape. I don't want him to be a liability. I want him to always be a tremendous asset.
I love how he's like, yeah, we just got to make sure this man is not a liability.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, and you know what? It's with Deion Sanders and Travis Hunter, it's been encouraging, Dad, in a culture that we know Deion comes from, where the idea is you tough everything out, you play through stuff, you play hurt, the era of football that you guys both played in here. The way he's handled this injury, where we had a while back the video of him reading the text messages from Travis in front of his team, where he wanted to be back for the big game they were going to play against Oregon or USC. And he said, no, I'm not going to let you back until you're absolutely ready to go. I care about more the young man than I do the product and the result on the field. I thought was encouraging. Deion's checked a lot of really competent boxes early on in his coaching career with some high-end stuff, but there's no doubt for a team that came out and did what they did against USC, got a close win last week against Arizona State, where, Dad, I saw a lot of people very bothered about Shedeur Sanders going over to show his watch to the student section after a narrow win over a bad Arizona State team. What would you be going through your head if you were a teammate of Shedeur Sanders in that moment? If you were an O or D lineman on that team who had struggled watching your quarterback going stunt on the student section like that?
Well, I mean, I listen, again, that's one of those moves I'm not really fond of, but I get it. They're your younger players, younger kids, and they stunt like that at times. And we've seen him do that thing.
Oh no.
With the watch, you know, before I know, come on now, come on. If I'm a teammate, listen, there's always that thought of you're writing a check I have to cash. This was post game. So, you know, I mean, I don't think there's much worry there. And I think all the players in Colorado already know, remember we talk about their realization, players understand, even college players, what's going on, that they all have a target on their back anyway.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. They know at this point.
Yeah, they really do. And I really, how Deion has mixed old school and new school going to the Hunter injury. And you're right. I mean, you know, Deion was my era, and he was a little past, obviously, me as well, is you just played. You just went out and played, and you realize it's not the smartest thing in the world. I mean, I go back and look at going on the field in some of the situations, and it probably would have been smarter not to. I should have redshirted my senior year instead of going out to play. You get smarter over the years of what you do in preservation. And this was the right thing to do for Deion, for this young player. And he's right about being in shape. I mean, he's a two-way guy. Will he come back and play two ways right away? I have no idea. But Shedeur, listen, I think all the players already know the showboating and the talk that goes on with him. It's not like, oh my God, where did this come from? It's like, I think it's like, what's he going to do this time, right? So I don't think it surprised anybody. I don't think it bothers anybody in that locker room because they know that's Shedeur's personality. They know he's going to do something like that. They know he's going to say something, and that's just the expectation. Whether you like it or not, he's going to do it.
And I think we've seen them handle loss pretty well so far.
Yeah.
It's not a worry of someone going out and embarrassing you in that sense.
Yes.
So I think it's one of those things. I'm generally pretty pro celebrating for players. You get so few instances. We always talk about how hard winning is in this sport, but we rarely ever celebrate it with that sincerity, understanding it's difficult to get to those points. While Shedeur wasn't part of the losing last year for this program, to get a chance to enjoy those moments and to be confident enough to do it. I think so many of us walk through life with our tail tucked between our legs because we're afraid to celebrate, because we know the minute you fail, people are going to be ready to tear you down. A program led by the greatest defensive back of all time has the confidence to work through that and be themselves publicly in a way that feels healthy in some ways. As I sit here and put my therapist cap on, maybe that's the healthiest thing in the world.
But see, I agree. I mean, even in their losses, and that's been a big thing to me, they've handled it well. Deion has handled it well, and that feeds down to the players on how you handle it. Hey, we got our butts whooped. You know, we got to get better. We need to get better here. We need to get better there. They haven't said anything really bad, even in the losses. And I actually like when Deion tells the other coaches, hey, get us now, because this is the worst we're ever going to be. You know, I like that for a team that's 2 wins away from being bowl eligible.
Crazy.
And they have
absolutely crazy.
And they have 2 more teams that are unranked. They're playing Stanford this week, who is not ranked. And then later in the season, they play Arizona. They still have UCLA, Oregon State, Washington State, and Utah, who are all at this point ranked teams. So we'll see how it goes. And I would still expect some success, even though against those teams. But as I said, you need the 6 wins, and they have 2 more unranked. So I do think they're going to go bowling this year, and I like the direction this year. And I can't sit there and really look at Deion and say, man, I don't like the way he's going about his business. Like I said, I don't think other coaches do, because in the coaching fraternity, it's about keep the spotlight off of me, put it on my players. And Deion doesn't do that. The spotlight is on him. He knows the spotlight is on him, but I think he has his players handling it well.
By the way, guys, Deion has been very vocal recently about how he's saying we have to get him a lucrative watch deal. He can't keep doing this for free. So he's about his business, okay?
Yes.
Well, I mean, we know that too. Deion keeps filing for trademarks for catchphrases. Every other day I wake up and he's filed for something new. The latest this week, I believe, was Give Me My Damn Theme Music and Bull Junk, that he is now tried to trademark here, along with It's Personal, We Keep Receipts, and Ain't Nobody Care. The ability for someone to trademark phrases that people have said for a long time because he said them most recently is incredible. That man is getting to the money this year.
He is not the first or last that is going to do things for money. I did a thing with him years ago, right, that we had to wear jerseys for. And I don't know if it was either one of the sponsors on the jersey, he had a competing one, or he wasn't getting paid by them, but he cut that off his jersey. It was like on the sleeve, and he cut that sponsor off the jersey. So as I said, he's not the first or last to do things according to a sponsor or wanting to get paid for something. So, you know, especially in this day and age, man, where you do the right thing or get it seen enough on TikTok or something that you're going to get money for. I have no problem with somebody wanting to do some stuff to get some money.
Well, and I do think it's encouraging that he's also pointing that in the direction of his players, because now we can do that for the first time. He's been making money hand over fist with the kind of sponsorship deals and commercials we've watched him do with Saban for a couple of years now. So that's all worked pretty well. We can ask, I'd be curious. So Lance Leipold, the head coach of the Kansas Jayhawks, is going to join us next. And the conversations that get had around college football right now are very interesting, because a lot of it is, hey, NIL based, this cult of personality, the things that coaches like Deion Sanders are doing to try and build up a program early on. I saw an article in the LA Times yesterday about Lincoln Riley, about a guy who just turned 40 years old and has seen a couple of his coaching mentors pass away recently, and has had sort of this, I think, existential crisis that everyone has as they get older in life, but looking around his profession and wondering, how long do I want to do this? How much am I missing by being involved at this level as a college coach here versus what his NFL counterparts have just in general versus people in life knowing what these coaches go through, Dad. And for Lance Leipold, who's been around this a lot longer, who's closer to your age in coaching and has come up, through Wisconsin Whitewater and Buffalo and all these different places as a coach to arrive here now, the different perspectives on the outlook for coaches that have so much on their plate, given the current schedule, given the current demands of the sport and the recruiting calendar that spans so much of the year is, are we going to see more guys stick around long enough to be doing this at Lance Leipold's age?
It has changed immensely for coaches. Coaches love coaching, and they knew what came along with it, and a lot more got heaped onto their plate. Now, I say that. I don't feel sorry for them. They get paid a lot of money to coach football in college, but there is more responsibility that goes with it. So I am interested, too, in Lance, what he may say about where that is now, the extra that got thrown on him and how that's managed in the college game now, and if that takes a little bit of shine off just the love of coaching with all the ancillary stuff that goes along with it.
It is fascinating because we've seen this happen with players, right? Money's gotten so good in the NFL that players look at their long-term physical health and say, maybe I don't want to stick around and play a decade plus, even if I've got the opportunity. And you mentioned all that money in coaching now. You can make so much of it so quickly in college that maybe there is a thought of, well, I don't want to do this until I'm 65, 70 years old. We will ask Kansas Jayhawks head football coach Lance Leipold all of this and more coming up next here on GoJo and Golic. Welcome back to GoJo and Golic, Mike Golic Jr. and Mike Golic Sr., and we are delighted now to be joined by the head coach of the Kansas Jayhawks football team, Lance Leipold, with us here. Coach, thanks for joining us. Good morning. How you doing?
My pleasure. Good morning, guys. Doing well.
Coach, it's so fascinating. We're in the middle of college football season right now. You guys are 5-1. You got Oklahoma State coming up this week, and you're rolling right now. And it's interesting because everyone's treating that like very normal. Last year, you guys were this revelation in college football. Game day came to Lawrence for the first time, and you've made that university really care about and invest in football so much that I don't want to say people are taking it for granted this year, but it feels very normal now that you guys are going out and you're sitting here at 5-1. What's that experience been like for you in year 2 down in Lawrence right now?
Yeah, it's pretty unique. It's how quickly, we can all forget maybe of where we start and where things kind of go. And I think as coaches, sometimes we got to enjoy that process a little bit, but it's exciting that expectations change and we've been able to keep a core group of guys together and keep getting better. And we got a lot of football to play yet. And as we know, the Big 12 conference has become so competitively equal, and it's kind of how you're matching up each and every week, and don't get caught in comparisons because it can change pretty quickly.
Yeah, now the expectation would just change out, and it makes the pressure really on to say, okay, we got to keep meeting that expectations in a college world that gets talked about a lot now. You've been in this for a while. You and I are about the same age. I know you're younger. I'm 60. Of how it's changed. So talk about it from your side of it with NIL, with the transfer portal, of what you got into when you first started coaching to now your expectations are high again and keeping them there with all the new things kind of thrown in.
Yeah, Mike, that's a great question. 30 plus years ago, I was a graduate assistant for Barry Alvarez when he was building the program at the University of Wisconsin. And, even in philosophical ways of doing things, I think it still stays to the core, but, find a way to run the football, play good, tough defense, and you got a chance to win some football games. Well, and then all of a sudden you go to up-tempo offenses and all these different things, spreading things out, rarely under center. I think the game has changed immensely that way. But I think for us at the core of what we want to do, we want to be fundamentally sound within the program. We want to be a physical team. We were able to have a dominant running game last week. So that part changes. Now, when you get into NIL and roster retainment, but also having an immediate way to improve your roster, which we've been able to do. We've been able to find players that fit our culture of what we want to try to do, but yet maybe look for that other opportunity. So we can't just turn our nose up at that as well. We went from a program that was having some of the most defections to we had the least amount in the Big 12 last year. So it's a different balancing act of what we thought we signed up for many years ago, for sure.
And part of the change in that now, too, is how quickly you can change the fate of your team. Colorado's a team that's getting ready to join you guys in the Big 12 this upcoming season. And Deion Sanders, a lot like you did last year, but in very different ways, has been able to help turn around that program here in the immediacy. What have you made of that injection of personality and head coaching for someone whose path's a little bit different than maybe yours or others?
Yeah, I was kind of asked something about Coach Sanders a week or so ago. I think, and I probably answered it tongue in cheek about, I watch NFL, he played NFL and all these type of things. But I think when after I got done answering it, Deion coached high school football. He then coached FCS football at the HBCU level, which doesn't always have the same resources as even maybe the North Dakota States and South Dakota States and some of those schools. I think that gets kind of lost in some of the things that he's been able to do. I think a lot of it has to do with, you talk more, more about the roster upheaval and turnover, but I think he's been able to come up through some of the ranks, just like a lot of our staff members here at the Division III level, and did a lot with maybe less resources, and I have to commend him for that. And I think he's changed a lot about how a lot of us will look at.
One of the things along those lines too, going back to what you're dealing with now, and I heard somebody talking to a bunch of recruits about this is, and how true it may be, that less high school seniors get scholarships now. If you have like 25 to give, sometimes it's 12 to high school kids and 12 to transfer portal guys. So how has that changed?
Yeah, I think, Mike, what we're trying to do is, at least as a base philosophy, is that if we have a senior that's matriculating through graduation, we're going to replace that position on our chart with a high school player. if we lose a player through unfortunate attrition, then we're maybe going to look at it through the portal. I went through and looked last year at a time. I think most Power 5 schools were signing about 15 to 17 high school players. And now that, though, there's not the hard cap anymore, you do have a chance to make up in some other ways. So it is an opportunity, but I think maybe Group of 5, FCS, and other levels of football should benefit from some of those high school players that might not have signed at the Power 5 level right out of high school.
Coach, one of the other big changes around the sport we've seen is the sort of year-round nature of the recruiting calendar, a lot of the holdover rules from the pandemic. And we've seen a lot of people comment on the effect it's having on coaches. Do you think this is going to be something that drives some coaches away from the sport long-term if the schedule stays this demanding?
Yeah, I think as Mike said earlier, I think my age has kind of put me in the fourth quarter, maybe, so to speak, in this thing. So, I think my personality and things is always going to be at the college level. But I do think there's going to be it's a tough life on assistant coaches now. It really is, and not just on the assistant coaches, more importantly, on their families, and that's tough. And I think you're going to see that. Probably there's going to be some people at this level that are going to gravitate themselves to the NFL lifestyle, where it is just coaching and the scouting department is going to handle the travel. I do worry about that, and feel very fortunate and blessed here at Kansas that I've been able to maintain a staff.
Coach, just about a minute or so left. You got a game against Oklahoma State. Your quarterback, Jalen Daniels, has the back issue. Where are we with that? And tell us a little bit about this game coming up.
Yeah, right now Jalen's still kind of in a day-to-day type thing. He's highly doubtful for this week. Jason Bean will get the start again. Going down to Stillwater's a tough place to play. Kansas State found that out last week. We found that out 2 years ago. We're going to have to continue to be able to run the football, find a way to keep minimizing opportunities for, it looks like, Coach Gundy has settled in on a quarterback, and they're starting to find their stride. So it'll be a big game for us, and hopefully we'll find a way to get a road win and get that 6th win of the year.
It's been impressive as hell to watch, Coach, the last couple of years, what you've been able to do, resetting the foundation for that program, all the investment that the university's made in it now. It's exciting to see, and I know myself and a lot of others are looking forward to watching you guys and the continued success for the Jayhawks there. So thanks so much, Coach. Best of luck this week, and hopefully we'll get to run into you again down the road here soon.
Sounds great, guys. Always respect the job both you guys do. It's great to be with you. Appreciate the opportunity, and rock chalk, everyone.
There you go, Coach. Thanks.
There we go. Rock chalk, baby.
Love that.
It really is incredible, Dad. Like, I remember going down to Kansas. This was years ago now, before Coach was in the building, when it was still Les Miles around there, when you had Coastal Carolina sort of announce their presence on the big stage in college football with a huge upset on the road there in Kansas. And you wondered towards the tail end there what football was going to continue to look like at a school that's traditionally been a basketball power. Right. But now we see what Mark Stoops has been able to build at Kentucky. Obviously, Mac Brown's had his second stint here at North Carolina that's enjoyed more recent success. But Kansas, in the shadow of that building, and man, you go on campus and you saw traditionally the stark contrast in the resources and the things the basketball program had versus what football had across the street. For Coach Leipold to come in 1 year and get it to the point now where they're 5-1, and we're like, yeah, of course they're 5-1. It's Kansas. Football is nothing short of remarkable. Really, what him and the other side, what Kansas State and they've been able to do over there as well, has been pretty insane.
And now he has to deal with that expectation all the time, right? Now it's like, okay, you're winning, so winning begets winning. Let's keep it going. So, but it's pressure you want. That's the expectation you want, and that's why you go to a school and try and turn it around like that.
Pressure's a privilege. Coming up next, we'll see if it bursts pipes or makes diamonds with Andrew Whitworth as we look ahead to Thursday Night Football and the upcoming NFL slate.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Let's take a look at the AFC North standings right now. So Pittsburgh on top of the standings thanks to their win over Baltimore on Sunday. They also have a divisional win over the Browns, remember, from earlier this season. Ravens still the front runners when it comes to odds, sitting at plus 140. Then you have the Browns, then Steelers, then the Bengals at plus 475. Guys, I mean, good odds there on the Bengals if you believe.
Yeah.
We saw Joe Burrow coming off his best game of the year so far. What do we think? Do you believe?
You know what? I'm as encouraged and close to that as I have been in quite some time, Jesse. And Dad, I think that was the most encouraging thing we've seen in a while this weekend is the way Joe Burrow moved. It wasn't just that they managed to go out there and play well and get a win, but it was the fact that you saw him buy time with his legs again, actually scramble for a first down and get up with some confidence. All of these things that if you're a Bengals fan might be such a sigh of relief that you breathe. We know it can be fleeting. We know you're not out of the woods yet. He goes over to the sideline and he straps on that gigantic electric bag on his leg and has to try and work through it each time. But it was as positive a sign for them, and certainly the Jamar Chase faction of that as well, where they just decided, hey, we're going to huck and chuck it football to the really good wide receiver and let things happen. Amazing how well that can work.
I trust that offense the most going forward. Sit there and look at the division, and Mike Tomlin. I mean, they're 2-0 beating Baltimore and Cleveland, and they sure as hell, Pittsburgh aren't doing it with the offense. So that's a defense that is going to have to carry a large load on their shoulders. But, you know, right now, 5 games in, they're getting it done. A surprising thing to me, but I'm still in the long haul. I'm going with Cincinnati.
All right, well, let's ask our next guest here. Very excited to welcome back to the show Andrew Whitworth, former NFL offensive lineman, part of the TNF on Prime coverage that will be heading to Arrowhead this week. Denver and the Chiefs getting ready to play. But Whit, as you look at it, we're talking about the AFC North here, obviously a division you're very familiar with, your old team in the Cincinnati Bengals. How would you handicap this division? Who do you trust right now in one of the toughest divisions in football?
Oh, you're muted.
Whit, we got you muted here,
You're
unfortunately,
muted.
brother. We want to give the people your great words. All good.
Come on, baby, unmute me. There we go.
There you go.
Let me speak. I think it's one of those divisions that it seems like they're playing with us, right? I mean, one week we see the Pittsburgh Steelers play a certain way. We all jump on this. Hey, you know what? This team can't do it. Offensively, they weren't that much better, but defensively, wow, they're special. I really think the Ravens is the one people overreacted a little bit to this weekend. I mean, you look at all the drops, you look at how Lamar's continued to kind of show some progress in this offense, and I really think is getting better and better every week out with Todd Monken. I think they're going to be a tough out for everybody right now. But Cincinnati, I mean, I got a little excited. I got a little happy. I saw Joe Burrow. I think it was even an incomplete pass. I saw him kind of avoid a rush and kind of make a little bit of a jump move with his legs. I was like, whoa, wait a minute. We might be back. I don't care what contraption it is. I don't care what he needs to get out. But, hey, if Joe Burrow's back, Cincinnati is back in contention. And so I think it's kind of interesting. You know, if there's any team that's used to starting a little slow, that football team. And I think, we've touched on this before, but those teams you see that have that ability to go on these stretch runs where they win a ton of games in a row always kind of seem to be the teams you got to worry about the most. And the Bengals the last couple of years have shown that ability to get hot and stay hot.
Yeah, I agree. And we've talked a lot about the beginning of the season for Joe in his 4 years. His first 2 games, he's 1-7. So they've had the slow start, and they come back and do well. And Lamar Jackson struggles against Pittsburgh, against Pittsburgh. He's 1-3, 7 interceptions, just 3 touchdowns. So that Pittsburgh defense is doing what it normally does. We've been talking about the other side of it in light of like Minnesota and a bad season. But before we talk about that and the possibility of trading Kirk Cousins, which is easy to say and harder to do, about bad teams. You know, you played a long time in the NFL, and not all your teams were great teams. I was certainly on some teams that were out of it after 6 or 7 weeks. Take people inside the locker room and preparation. When you as a player, we all know the writing on the wall quicker than anybody. When a season is kind of lost, what a player kind of reverts to in that locker room and how they're preparing for the rest of the games.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because every situation, just like anything else in the NFL, is different. But when you're on one of these teams, maybe that talent-wise, you don't have the guys and you don't have the horses, and you know it. And every week you go out and it seems like you compete in games and then you just end up coming up short and just don't have the ability to play well. there starts to, be that point where there's going to be some leadership, some guy in the room who's going to stand up, and they're going to have to be this moment where the team says, hey, forget everything that has to do with excuses and whose fault it is and whose is this. Let's handle how we play the next 8 weeks, the next 9 weeks of the season. Let's own it. Let's be the onus for that. No excuses. Let's go play football. And you see it every year. There's some team that starts off slow, and then all of a sudden they start playing good football. Usually they start running the football and playing some defense, which is a mentality part of the football game. And it's about how you compete, which wins. And then, there's a couple teams this year, you look at it, that it's going to be who's in that locker room and who's going to step up, because you really start to doubt yourself. You really start to say, hey, man, I don't know what it's worth the rest of the year. And, I think that, to me, you look at even this Broncos team this week, right? It's one of those things. We can talk about Sean Payton and Vance Joseph and all these things all we want, but at some point, look at the history of the last couple of years. Is it always the coaches? Because to me, it's, hey, somebody in this locker room's got to say, there's a sense of pride of how we play football, and this is how we're going to go forward. And if you're not on that bandwagon, get the heck out of here.
I've always said this, Whit, is, we can talk about coaches and game plans and things like that, but I always put more onus on the player. I'm the one that's got to go one-on-one with you. If I don't beat you or you don't beat me, that's going to affect the game plan. So I think, we can talk coaches all we want, but really it's the players that decide this thing.
There's no doubt about it. It's 11 one-on-one matchups, baby. And if you got the guys who are winning those matchups, you're going to be a really good football team. There's a reason we can't sit here on one hand and say, hey, the San Francisco 49ers are so good. They have all these all pros. You have all these guys that win all these things. And then on the other hand, say it's the coach's fault when a team loses. You praise the horses on one team and you say it's all the coaches on the other. That's just not the case. The players have to go make plays and win football games.
Well, one of the players that did that last week in the game you guys got an up-close and personal view was Justin Fields, who's been this hot-button issue for so many people so far this season. What did you take away from that Bears win against the Washington Commanders in terms of how Justin performed?
Well, first off, I took the Commanders, and Fitz took the Bears, and he's going to take the lead in our pick'em for the season. And you know what? I wasn't even upset about it. I wasn't upset about it. You know why? Because it felt so good to see the Bears rise up, have a game like that where, hey, all right, here's something to build off of. Here's some success. Justin Fields, let's move forward, because that's another building that up until that week, it was excuses galore for all the different reasons, things going on off the football field, the drama with Chase Claypool, everything else. They needed to go have an effort like that. Now it's what can they build off from there? I thought Justin looked decisive, put his feet in the ground and made decisions. You see him sometimes, he's kind of a floaty guy in the pocket, always on his toes a lot, and kind of something you've seen him critiqued about. But this week, it just seemed like he's decisive. He's really hitting those things like, hey, I'm going to hit my first read, my second read, or I'm going to run and get out of the pocket and make something happen. And good to see him make some progression there. And I just hope he builds off of it, because you'd love to see this team start to compete.
We'll get to veteran quarterbacks like a Russell Wilson and a Mahomes for this Thursday night game in a minute. But sticking with the young quarterbacks, Frank Reich came out and told about the meetings he's having with the owner, David Tepper, about they haven't been fun meetings. They're winless, and Tepper, the record since he's been there, I think is 29-58 or something like that. And we're talking about young quarterbacks, and the thought, when Andy Dalton took over for Bryce Young when he missed that game, that offense moved well. But what is your thought on a young quarterback staying out there, taking his lumps, as opposed to should we sit him down for a little bit and let him look from the sidelines? Where do you sit on that?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. It's again, one of those things just kind of depending on the guy, but I think about more what's around him. Can I protect him and put him in positions to be successful? If I think of it as, hey, I got this young quarterback, and if he plays well, that might be the only part of the game that's actually going to be good for us, because defensively we can't stop people. Offensive line-wise, I'm not sure I can protect him. I think, to me, that's what's got more to do with it, rather than, hey, do they play early or do they not? Can I put him in positions to have a chance to be successful? And I think that's the toughest part. And then also realizing that they're going to make mistakes and they're going to have issues and there's going to be ups and downs. I mean, I was with Andy Dalton when he was a rookie and started for his first career game. I was with Jared Goff after his rookie year. That was a disaster. And people wanted to say, hey, maybe this guy's not the number one pick. Shouldn't have been the number one pick. And then boom, his second year, Sean McVay, he takes off. I saw Carson Palmer and his run as a young quarterback kind of take off. And so, you've seen these moments, and it really has a lot to do with what's around them, how that coach can put them in positions to win. I think Bryce Young's is a tough situation. I mean, who are those offensive weapons? Who are the guys you can give the football to? They haven't protected him very well. I mean, it's not that it's been a great scenario for him, and maybe it should have been a little bit of watching Andy Dalton play for a few weeks, and then we'll see you get in there and play.
What do you say, especially for you with Jared? You're coming over as one of the most important veteran voices in that Rams locker room. What do you say to a guy like that when he's struggling in that way?
Well, I think it's very similar to what I talked about a losing football team. They need a veteran. You need a veteran offensive lineman in that group, a guy on that offense that says, hey, when I walked in with Jared, it's like, listen, our group up front, we're going to handle how we play the football game from a mentality standpoint. We're going to handle whether people touch you or not. All that's going to be taken care of, and we will carry a sense of pride about that. Like, you don't worry about that kind of stuff. I mean, I look at Jared Goff, John Sullivan, who doesn't get talked about enough, our center, tremendous dude, one of the smartest football players I've ever been around. I mean, Jared Goff didn't have to speak other than to say the cadence, right? I mean, this guy handled everything. So he had a presence like that. When I was in Cincinnati, we had a center like that with Andy. When Carson was young, he had a 13, 14-year-old center. So, I mean, those kind of things to me are really important. What kind of situation do you put him in? How much does he have to think and process before he plays?
So with that background of Jared Goff, how interesting is it for you to see the way he is acting now in Detroit? Because I feel like he's kind of internalized some of this Dan Campbell stuff. He's a veteran, and he gave it back to Fitz on set with you guys the other week. What was that like? Were you like a proud parent watching him that day?
I was. Fitz is my guy, but I was a proud big brother, man. I'm nudging him under the table like, I love it. Look at you. Because that's the thing. Knowing Jared personally and being with him off the football field, whether it be playing golf or just hanging out, that is his personality. He's not as kind of timid and shy and like just not as boisterous about who he is in the media. He's way more the other way. He's very feisty if you bring up conversations or topics, no matter what it is. He's very opinionated. And so to hear him kind of do that finally in front of people, I'm like, yes, like be yourself and be who you are and why you're such a special young man. And so, it's like it was a lot of fun to see him do that, but it's even more fun to see him in these leadership positions. I mean, you see some of the video of him in these locker rooms talking to these guys. Jared is a unbelievable man and a great guy. And we had these conversations when he went to Detroit about what this could be for him, because he needed a little bit of just a chance to be around that grit, that toughness of a city like that, and also this Dan Campbell. And so I couldn't be more excited for him. And, man, what a football team they have.
They really do. And he's come a long way since his rookie year and not knowing what side the sun rose from and set on. So that was a lot of fun to have with a rookie back then. Yeah. Speaking of going to a veteran quarterback, we were talking earlier, and everybody is now about Kirk Cousins with Justin Jefferson going on IR. What's the future of this team this year? And even when he was on the team, hell, they were still 1-4. It's not like, they were winning a ton of games. And as I said earlier, when it's easy to say we should trade him, but you got to find a trade partner who would trade for him, give up assets, and because there's not a whole lot of rent-a-player in the NFL for a half a year.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. People want, hey, Minnesota should, fire sale and start trying to trade great players. It's like, all right, but you need trade partners to do that. And especially in his case, yeah, the Jets were a team that you could say, oh, man, that made sense a couple of weeks ago. But now they've kind of gone down the road, and it's like, hey, yeah, it's Zach Wilson. Like, we're kind of committed there. And let's be honest, they're only a couple of wins from probably saying, hey, this season's going to be real tough for us to have a lot of upside anyway. So I think that there's really just not a lot of teams out there that you're going to get maybe the value that people think. And that's what I always think is so funny is that, I think fans have such a weird reaction to like what trade values actually are, because it's real different to be trading for a guy that you're trying to steal from a team than trading for a guy that a team's trying to get rid of. So, the offers sometimes are a lot different. And I think that it may not be the value people think. And especially, I just don't know if there's a great home for Kirk Cousins right now in this situation.
From a veteran to another rookie, we talked a little bit about Bryce before, but this news just coming down right now. Anthony Richardson, the Colts young quarterback, been placed on injured reserve, so he'll be sidelined for at least the next 4 weeks. We saw that shoulder injury this past weekend. You got any concerns with his usage in that Colts offense early in his NFL career? And how we've seen him get banged up a couple of times already?
Actually, there's a play in the preseason that kind of stuck out to me. I circled. I remember telling Carissa Thompson this when we flew up to do the Philly-Indy preseason game, is that I saw him going into the end zone and about to score in a clip, and I thought the way he went in and kind of took the shot, I said, "Ooh, I don't like his demeanor about getting hit," in the sense that you watch some of these really good football players like this. Forget playing quarterback. If it's a Chad Johnson I can think of that just sticks out in my mind, of their ability to avoid those hits, like almost like the Matrix. They could get in the air and just kind of, you'd think it looked bad, but they really didn't absorb much of the hit. And you watch some of his early play in the season, it just too many times where it's like, it's not about whether he's got the football or how they're using him. He's literally thinks, hey, this is college or this is high school. I can absorb these hits and kind of stay square shouldered and get hit like this. And in the NFL, I don't care if it's the smallest DB on the field. You can't take those hits like that. You've got to get out of the way. You've got to learn how to turn your shoulders and move like a boxer, and at least only absorb part of those. And I think to me, that was the most concerning thing, is seeing a couple of those clips. He's a freak, unbelievable athlete. I think he's going to be a really good quarterback, but he's got to develop a little bit of ability to avoid those shots.
Everybody has their learning curve when they go from college to the NFL on just how different the game is and how they may have to adjust their game. Now, going to a quarterback that really avoids probably the best slider in the game and can avoid Russell Wilson. I mean, that guy knows how to get down when he's getting out of the pocket and such like that. So looking at the Thursday night game with Denver and Kansas City, I guess the biggest question is, how the hell does Denver make this a game?
Yeah, it's going to be a challenge. You look at defensively, how they've played, and then you look at Mahomes' record against teams that have bad defenses. It's not real good, look good for the Broncos. But, I think it's one of those things with them right now. Let's be honest, it's less about trying to win a game, and it's more about showing really who they are as a football team. How do they get better? Because right now, I think that the simplest way for them to go into this game is we've got to show a physical presence and attitude on defense that separates what we've done the first 5 weeks. We've got on offensive side of the football, we got to take care of the football. We got to play physical on that side. We got to convert in these situations in the red zone, play up to our standards, and let the game take care of itself. I thought that's what the Chicago Bears did so well last week, is it's about winning the moments, and then the game will take care of itself. And that's what this Broncos team's got to do. But, it's also developing some version of a marriage or relationship, because it just seems like Peyton and Russell and everything else, it's, just all trying to figure each other out still in this stage.
Yeah, it's definitely been a learning process. We saw a little bit of that friction on the sideline last week, but hey, man, conflict is a love language on NFL sidelines. We see that bear some pretty solid fruit. One more before we let you go. We only got about a minute left here. Are you ever going to be able to trust the Dallas Cowboys again after what the hell happened against the 49ers?
I'll be honest with you. I didn't trust them much last week. Here's the thing. I think that they have a good football team, but when you're playing the San Francisco 49ers, I look at it right now. Even you look at some of the stuff that went down with Micah Parsons yesterday and Debo, and it really screams the Rams 49ers and the dominance that the Niners had over the Rams in that division while I was there, because it's almost like their style of play, how they're going to go about competing in this football game, just doesn't really match up well with what the Cowboys are and who they are as a team. And so I just think there's a level of the toughness and speed and attitude the Niners play with that is just different. And it's on a different level than really what the Cowboys' MO in the football game is. So I think it's going to be a challenge to see them ever beat the 49ers. I don't think that's an opponent they want. They want somebody else to handle it for them.
Well, appreciate your time this morning. It was interesting. You talking about playing with a young Jared Goff, a young Andy Dalton, a young Carson Palmer. I thought you were going to say you play with a young Boomer Esiason as well, as far back as you were going. So,
all right, 3 decades, baby.
Yeah.
There we go. Whit, you're the man. We appreciate the time. Have fun this Thursday. We'll talk to you again soon. All right, brother.
Appreciate you, fellas. Thank you.
Thanks, Whit.
Oh, man. Yeah, now I can say he kept going back. I was like, oh, man, all right. This man been
played
going
a
through
long
with these guys.
time. Wow.
Yeah. No, it's that kind of longevity at that position. He's one of the bigger freaks to ever play offensive tackle in the NFL. Coming up next, though, this could be a fun one. We have gone football heavy today. Let's get the answer in the form of a question here. Katie Nolan joins us ahead of her appearance as a part of Celebrity Jeopardy. Living out a dream for all of us. Next here on GoJo and Golic. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., and making her triumphant return, Celebrity Jeopardy contestant Katie Nolan. Katie, how you doing, bud?
I'm so good. It's the day I've been counting down to for a while, my Celebrity Jeopardy day. So I am very, very excited and happy to be here with both of you, obviously.
I'm very, very proud of you, Katie. Let me just say that right out of the gate, because there is no way I would take this challenge on. I would be scared to death. How nerve-wracking was this?
It's very, very scary. Truth be told, I was asked last year to do it. And I thought it was as a joke. Like, I thought they were just like, hey, you talk about Jeopardy a lot because you watched it. And so I was like, no, absolutely not. I would never. I don't want to do a test of wits in front of people, a studio audience. And then you have to wait and then it's going to air. So you have to just kind of stew in what you know has happened. And then this year, I mean, I got up to a point this year where I was like, you just start giving yourself credit for things you've done. And I've watched Jeopardy every day for like the majority of my life. And so I was like, you know the ins and outs of it. You get a lot of questions right at home. It's just going to be about believing in yourself and calming down when you're up there. Because, being on TV, you're like, oh, I feel like I have to, I don't know, it's just stressful. And so I figured it would be a good challenge for me to like, trust that I know something and just say it, because, some things in my career have kind of beaten into me that I don't know what I'm talking about. So then it's just like, believe in yourself, because most of the time you just doubt yourself. And so that's what I did. And to answer your question, it was very, very stressful.
Oh,
so you went in with that attitude. I know we're not going to give away any state secrets.
Yeah,
everyone's got to watch tonight to tune in.
Right.
But how would you now retroactively grade your performance on here? How do you think you did, not in terms of performance, but in displaying that confidence and putting those things to action you just talked about?
Okay, just in that one part, I would say like B+, A-.
All right.
So because I think I did all right in that way. This is gonna be so funny once you've watched it to listen back to this, because it's just the grade I would give myself is probably like a C.
Honestly.
Ooh. Oh, well, I mean
It's
a lot of people pass with C's.
Yeah, that is true. But my mom would have grounded me, so that's the house I was raised in. A C was like, you are in trouble.
Yeah. Well, listen, to my son and Jake and Mike's brother Jake, a C was an A. So, it's
everything is so different.
So, but here's what's interesting, because you said, I do well at this at home. We all sit around at home and do this, Wheel of Fortune, all the different game shows, and you get it. You can't understand why the person on TV didn't get it.
You might even say, you idiot.
Yes, yes.
And then once you've done it, you're like,
Yeah, so Mike and I had Anthony Anderson on a while ago, and he's hosted game shows and been on game shows. And I asked him this same question I'm going to ask you is you sit at home and you get it right, but then you get there and there's the buzzer and you got to get the buzzer in. You got to answer in a split second. How you said you did well at home, just take it then to the studio and just how different it is.
It's so different because you know what the game board looks like and you know what their podiums look like, but you don't really ever see, the first time you stepped on a TV set and you were like, oh my God, this is so much smaller than I imagined, or so much bigger than I imagined. So you're like trying to calibrate that and take in that I walked into that studio and I cried. I was mortified. My eyes filled up with tears because it's now named the Alex Trebek Studio. And he was like TV daddy to me.
Yeah.
And so just like walking in there and seeing it in person and then being like, you get to do this, I got like very emotional. So then luckily they take you to a green room and then you can calm yourself down. But then they take you out for like a rehearsal and to just teach you how to click. But that's when you're taking in all of the okay, so the host is going to be standing there. Okay, the audience is right there. This is how you barely get to practice the clicking. And then they're like, cool, we're rolling. Here we go. And you're just like, and so I think the first few, I had to I think a couple times you might catch me on camera because now I've been watching them back and they're doing the thing where they put the three of them on screen with the board. So they're always on camera. And I'm like, I didn't know we were doing that. I thought there were times I was off camera where I was probably being like, to calm myself down. And now I know it's going to be on the episode. But yeah, I just had to breathe and just be like, being freaked out's not going to help. Being freaked out's not going to help. The thing I'm excited to see back is just if any of the nervousness came across, or if there were times where my brain just wandered. And then all of a sudden I was like, I have to come back. I'm in the middle of, it's a long game. This Celebrity Jeopardy now has triple Jeopardy. So it's 3 rounds.
Right.
It's a slog. And it's very stressful to get your brain working like that. I have since read the things that people actual Jeopardy, not Celebrity Jeopardy, which is a lot easier than regular Jeopardy, I think. I've read now what real Jeopardy people say about how to prepare. And they're like, you need to eat right before you go on. You should drink a cup of coffee right before you go on. And you need to practice the buzzer more than anything.
What do you mean practice? I mean...
Oh, there's ways. If you're truly interested, there are ways. I bought a book. I bought a book that's how to master the button.
Come on.
It's just, there's a guy who really tested it and built himself. You can, I think, even they'll sell you a fake one that you can hook up to your computer that'll basically read how many seconds after the light turns on you buzzed. Because a lot of studies have shown that especially when you get to those certain levels of Jeopardy, I don't know how much Jeopardy you guys are watching, but I'm a big the champions rounds and all those things that Ken used to do. And now it's Holtzauer and Matamodio and those people, it's about buzzing. They all know the answers. It's just whether or not you can get in. And I will say the most frustrating thing from my episode was the buzzing, knowing the answer and thinking you buzzed first and somebody got in before you. Did you know that if you buzz before they're done giving the clue, not asking the question, I always say that, giving the clue, if you buzz before they're done, you get locked out from buzzing. For
so you're penalized for being eager.
Yes. So if you know it, so you're I want to be the first one in, it doesn't work that way. Once this light goes on, that's next to the clues, once the light goes on, you can buzz. And so the light goes on, somebody is flipping a switch to open up the voting. And if you voted, you've been bumped to the back of the line. And if you haven't voted and you're the first one to buzz in, you get to answer.
It's
so
almost
very frustrating.
It's almost like I'm watching F1 where the lights are going and you have to,
Yes,
wait
it's
for
very
that.
intricate and difficult, just like F1 and just as dangerous.
Yes, people don't give that nearly the respect it
dangerous.
deserves.
People have ended
100%.
up, people have ended up in the hospital on Jeopardy.
That's right.
Yeah.
That is right.
Wait,
so yeah, it's very stressful. The buzzing is very stressful.
Wow.
So you bought the book, but you've been on here with us a couple of times since this podcast started. And when you were calling games on Apple TV for Major League Baseball, you were showing us all your notes where there were these intricate drawings of people's hands on the baseball for pitches. And you had gone so above and beyond in your prepping for that. So, I was going to ask. So Katie Nolan, for the podcast audience, is holding up all of her flashcards. So this was your mode of practice for this.
I have a couple modes. These are my president flashcards because look, there are certain things. My whole philosophy going into this was like, I just don't want to get an easy one wrong. I do not want to be asked a question about a country and accidentally give the answer of a city. So let me make sure I know what all 197 countries on Earth are. So I was like, while I'm doing that, I might as well also learn where they are generally. So I studied maps. I now know where every country is. I know what they border. There's some where you're like, oh, that has a tiny border with Uzbekistan. Like, I don't know. But like, I know it generally where things are, which is something I feel like I should have always known. And
Right.
we kind of all pretend we know. I just wanted to make sure that going forward in my life, I'll know that. And then, like you said, because you saw a drawing of a hand holding a ball, clearly I take things too far. I then also made sure that I know every capital of every country that we have on planet Earth right now. And that includes those islands over by Australia. And there's many of those. And so I learned all that. I learned the presidents because that feels like something I should have known. I should know the order of the presidents. I do not. I did not. I kind of do now.
Well, does that make you go, man, I should have retained more? Like I didn't know there were 197 countries, quite honestly.
I was shocked by the things I didn't know. I was shocked of like, how have you never heard this before?
What's your favorite thing that you learned going back through to get ready for this that's now going to be like your party trick going forward
Capitals,
for a fun fact?
100% capitals. You tell people you know the capital of every country and they just start throwing countries at you. And you're like, got it. I'm afraid it's going to go.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr. here. Make sure you check out our friend Katie Nolan on Celebrity Jeopardy tonight. Here's more of our conversation with her.
Do you think it's going to be like a test? When we took a test, we studied for the test, and when the test was over, we forgot everything. So you did this, and now it's all gone.
I think it's going to be that if I don't keep reinforcing it every now and then. I feel like now that I'm older, weirdly enough, I used to always say, I get why they put us in school when we're younger, because your brain is more malleable. But like, I would care about it more now because I'm like interested now and curious now. And I like understand what I understand. And now I want to fill in the stuff where it goes so that I can like make it broaden my understanding, if that makes sense. Yeah. Whereas back then I was learning it for a test. And then I'm like, I'm never going to think about what it matters, which president came after which president. Whereas now I'm like, I didn't realize that this president and this president were this close together. That makes sense. Now I can see how that went and, you know, put together the story of history is what I feel like I'm doing now. And I'm understanding.
It is amazing how it works. You go to school when you didn't really think you cared about school. Then after school's over, you wish you'd have studied more in school and you want to learn. But just wait, when you get to my age, you don't give a damn about any of that stuff anymore. So it'll all go away at some point.
Yeah, I don't think my brain's getting better, so I don't know that it's going to hold on to all of these countries and capitals. But right now, I'm fun to be with at parties.
What about Luxembourg?
The capital of Luxembourg, you picked an easy one, is Luxembourg. So it's just one of those. You love those. Vatican City is like that. San Marino's like that. Monaco, where you're like, oh, the capital is just the name of the place. That's sick.
I'm not even going to quiz you on that because I wouldn't even know where to
I know, I could say anything.
But let me ask you this. Is there I know you studied a lot for it, but is there a category that came up or that would have come up where you would have just been like, well, okay, I'm screwed on this one?
Here's the thing. Because of how much it would matter in my life, because the stress would be too high, if there was anything too deeply sports related, I was terrified that my brain would go blank or I'd overthink it or I'd just be like, I have to get this the most right. And then it would be like, that's not, it was the obvious answer. You answered the like kind of niche-er answer. I was just afraid of how it would go because as a female sports fan who now works or did work in sports TV, whatever's happening with that, you are constantly being jeopardied about your knowledge. And it's like, if you get it even a little wrong, boom, we were right. She slept her way to the top. She has no business being here. There's just less wiggle room for me in getting something wrong. And that pressure alone, I think, would have got me talking myself out of answers that I absolutely should have gotten. That would have been my nightmare.
I never thought about it that being a female sports fan or working in sports as a woman is actually the greatest training for being on Jeopardy known to mankind.
You just have to know the answer to any question they may ask. And if you don't, you die as a sports fan. So that's been, now that I say it, it's perfect training.
If there were, and they do celebrity in a lot of the game shows, if there is another one that had it, that would be your, because I know you love Jeopardy, but if there was another game show or if they did this again that you would kill to be on, which would it be?
Family Feud.
Yes.
Then you have to rely on others, though.
I know.
See, here's the thing about,
also you can put it off on others. And then
but here's the thing about Family Feud, and I know our family, I know if the five of us were up there, and you know when somebody gives a dumb answer and they just all still say good answer, we'd probably get kicked off the show.
Yeah.
Because it would probably be Sydney who would give an answer where we'd go, what the hell did you just say?
I can just picture you all looking down the line like, what?
Yeah, exactly.
What?
So Family Feud, huh?
Yeah, first of all, I think Steve Harvey is a hilarious host on that show.
Yes.
He's perfect for Family Feud. When he turns to the camera and like acts like he's getting taken out because an answer is so stupid, it's perfect. I could just watch, and I have just watched in hotels where they have those like smart TVs with the weird channels that you don't know what they are. There's a channel that just shows clips from that show. They don't have to be in the same order. It's not full episodes. It's just like a highlight reel of Steve Harvey on Family Feud. And I could watch it all day. I should be ashamed to admit that, and I'm not. That's one of the reasons. And the other reason is because all the cool things I've done, I feel like I've wanted to be able to share them with my family. I'm not even saying that in a way that like I'm not that close with my family, but like going to the Super Bowl. When I became a person who goes to Super Bowls, I was like, I have to find a way to bring my dad to the Super Bowl, like especially the Patriots Super Bowl, which of course the one he saw happened to be the most boring. And the one my brother saw is the one that we lost to the Eagles. But like, I feel like getting them and bringing them to stuff they always want to. And so this would be one I could be like, yeah, you can come do this. And then I can also, this in the same spirit of you saying that you wouldn't say good answer, because of the way my family is, when they don't do well, I can go, see, it's not that easy. You couldn't just do my job.
Yeah. Because that is another one where you can buzz in whenever you want, but then you damn well
you better have something to say.
Better have something to say instead of just sitting there. Yeah.
So, Katie, you brought up all the things that you've gotten to done in your career. Where does this rank?
Oh, Jeopardy?
Yeah.
I'm close to number one.
Wow.
I'm close to number one. Just because this was like in its purest sense of the phrase, a dream come true. I watch Jeopardy all the time. It's like a cultural institution to me. It's like a respected TV institution that's been around. It's like it's still treated with like respect. The networks love it. It's like they're seen as their like shining star. And I got to be on it without having to take the test. I partially think that I got famous only to get famous enough to do this. And now I could just retire on top. This feels like the greatest.
I wonder, as they were going through hosts and there were some celebrity hosts.
Yeah, see, I'm not that celebrity. Here's the thing. I'm not celebrity enough for that.
Well, that's what I was saying. Were you sitting there going, man, I could do better than that. I could host better than that. And what if you had the chance to host Jeopardy? Now,
see, here's the thing. I do think having Ken as the host, and Mayim too, but having Ken as the host is great because he already knows most of the answers.
Yeah.
And so he doesn't have to wait to be signaled that like that's correct. He's got it. He knows. And he's like played the game before a lot, which I think is really helpful because he understands the traffic and he understands how that person behind the podium is feeling. And he does a really good job of like calming them down.
It is funny you describing Ken. It's like having a former player as a coach. Like Ken is the D'Amico Ryans of the Jeopardy hosting set there.
Like there's benefits to not being that, and there's benefits to being that. And the thought of hosting Jeopardy would make me throw up. It's like meeting your heroes type thing.
Speaking of, you guys are the Celebrity Jeopardy. You're playing for a charity. What was your charity?
The Association for Women in Sports Media. And I will tell you, I may have bungled the part where they tell you get to talk about your charity because there is something that is like really stressful when the people that say it before you have like charities that are about like life and death and other such things. But the reason I chose it is because I wanted a charity I have like a personal relationship with. And I also wanted a charity that if I got knocked out in the first round, they would still feel the money that they got. So like if you win the whole thing, they give $1 million. But if you even just play, I think they give, I don't know the number, but they give like 20,000, I want to say 10,000 to a charity. And so I didn't want it to be like, the American Red Cross's like a drop in the bucket. Which, not to say that you shouldn't give to those. Do you know what I'm saying, though? Like, I wanted a place that would be like, oh, my God, that money really helped. And from what I've heard, AWSM, after COVID hit, because people weren't going to school, they, like, suspended a lot of the things they normally do because you're not really networking when there's a virus going around. And so they were, like, not doing too well. And so I was like, this could keep an organization around that I really, really believe in and that like changed my experience in this industry for the better. It could keep it around.
Well, Katie, beyond excited to get to check this out. For everyone that's watching this on Wednesday when it comes out on the show here, Katie's episode is coming out that night. For everyone who listens to it later, you'll hopefully have watched and get to hear this in the preamble to it. You nailed the lead up for American Women in Sports Media on this. And Katie, if nothing else, I hope I didn't get too much in the way of you finally getting to hang out with my dad on air.
No, this was great.
This
was the ideal first time. Again, training wheels. I'm used to those. Yep. And then, so I'm assuming from here on out, you'll stay home and then we'll just take it.
It'll just be you and I, Katie. Yeah.
Perfect.
That's it.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I love that. That's so good.
There he goes.
This is good practice.
I completely agree. We don't need Mike. He needed to set up this first time after, and then we're pros. We can take care of it.
We can take it from here.
All right, welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., and Jesse Cofield. Our thanks to everybody who stopped by today. Kansas Jayhawks head football coach Lance Leipold, Andrew Whitworth, former NFL offensive tackle and part of the great coverage for Thursday Night Football in Prime, and our dear friend Katie Nolan, who's getting ready to take it to Celebrity Jeopardy tonight. Everybody make sure you watch and support the homie on that one. If you missed any of it, download, subscribe, rate, review, leave us a 5-star rating, and check us out wherever you get podcasts. Check us out on the DraftKings YouTube channel where you can get this after. And, of course, watch us live Monday through Friday, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings YouTube channel, DraftKingsNetwork.com, Samsung TV Plus, and more.
Roku as well, I think. Yeah.
Roku, all those like fun services there. You got them in your house. You're watching a bunch of other stuff on it. Watch us there too. It's a good time. My nephew Jackson watches us every morning. It's educational. We're like Miss Rachel for a lot of people. We can be your Miss Rachel.
We can do that. We can.
Oh, would I like
Miss
to
Rachel.
be that? Mm-hmm. Wow, how great would that be if we could all be Miss Rachel? Holy smokes!
Yeah, she's
like to
raking
make what
in
she
the
makes
dollars.
off her YouTube channel, man. Miss Rachel is rich and decadent.
Yep.
All right, guys, let's get to this as our first of the three quick stories to help finish off your day here. We've got Pro Can Jam, a.k.a. Disc Flect, which I feel like I have to say very slowly to be sure. These guys are beasts. So anyone unfamiliar with it, long game here. Producer Brandon alerted us this may have been a Two Americas situation, but essentially you've got a circular garbage can with a slot in front and a Frisbee played by multiple people. Usually it's a partnered game played on the beach, played with beer in hand, where you try and knock the Frisbee into the top. And Dad, for anyone watching on YouTube, watching live with us now, these old guys playing are absolutely lethally effective with the Frisbee in their hand. This looks like speed Frisbee as well.
Let me just tell you, the aged have taken over Can Jam and pickleball. That is, you can't keep us down anymore. The 55 and up crew are taking over the world of kind of sports. But Can Jam, I remember you and I played this with a group of people at your house when we were both at ESPN. We had a big party there, and I remember playing this very, very well. There's the slot in front of it, too, that if you miraculously can make the Frisbee in the slot. I know you stink at this game. You are.
No, I don't stink at this.
No, you do.
I'm dealing with I'm dealing with a very real and diagnosed case of the yips, and you diminishing that is an affront to my mental health.
You stink at the game right now. Right now, you stink at the game.
Yips.
The yips are getting worse.
Leave me alone. This is mentally taxing.
Yips is another word for stink right now. You stink at the game right now.
You're part of the problem in the way we treat athletes in this country. You should be ashamed of the way you're talking right now.
Oh, I'm sorry I don't
despicable.
cuddle you and hold you and say, oh, Mike, it'll be okay with the yips.
Yeah, maybe if you had, I'd have turned out better.
Yeah. You think you may not have lost your hair if that happened?
I mean, maybe I'd be married right now. Maybe I'd have a full head of hair. How do you feel now? Go explain that to Mom, that your treatment of me is now the reason I'm dealing with trauma and now can't be able to give you the guys things you want, like grandkids in life. How's that?
She's upstairs crying. You still can. You still can.
No, I'm dealing with all this trauma because you didn't hug me enough.
If you need me to hug you and cradle you for that all to happen,
that's too late now. It's too late now.
Why is it you're 34? How is it too late?
You had that chance when I was 14.
You can actually have a wife and be good at Can Jam all in the same one fell swoop.
Yes. It really is the worst case of the yips I've ever dealt with in anything right now. Like, for whatever reason, the Frisbee is just outside of my purview. And I played for so long. This used to be a game I enjoyed so much. Jesse, we were talking before Polish horseshoes. We called it Beersby where I was from, but another absolute banger of a game that involves a Frisbee I just can't play now.
One day we'll get you back out there with a Frisbee in your hand.
The world I want to live in right now, but apparently my father is going to be the reason he tries to crush my dreams in that. It's unbelievable, the support
This is
here.
what your generation does. You go into therapy and say, I confess it's my parents' fault. They did something to me that made me screwed up right now.
Yeah.
I mean, you destroyed the current financial climate and housing market, so it wouldn't be a stretch to say you did it to my feelings and thoughts too.
What?
Yeah, exactly. Now we got him right where we want him. Let's move on to that. Speaking of young people going out here and trying to overcome circumstance, the NHL season began last night, and all eyes were on #1 overall pick Connor Bedard, rookie, getting set to go for the Blackhawks. He goes and nets a point in the debut. Also, though, Jesse apparently had a little bit of an issue getting ready in warmups.
Yeah, this could have been a case of the yips. He is just walking out for warm-ups, and all his teammates are standing there. Everybody's looking at him, cameras on him. He realizes he doesn't have his stick. He's literally walking out to the ice without his stick, hustles back and grabs it, and then he's like, okay, all right, I'm ready to go, everyone. But he literally made it practically onto the ice and then was like, oh, yep, need my stick.
Yeah, struggle is real for that kid there. And I say kid because at 18 years and 85 days, he becomes the second youngest player in Blackhawks franchise history to notch a point in his NHL debut behind a guy we know very well, Dad. Yeah. You know very well, I should say, in Eddie Olczyk.
Yeah. And did you see in true 18-year-old fashion an interview after the game? So he goes out, they play Pittsburgh, and in the opening faceoff, he's up against Sidney Crosby, who was a rookie in 2005. By the way, Bedard had 1 assist in that game. Crosby's first game, he had 1 assist and finished up with 102 points his rookie year. So we'll see where Bedard goes. But I loved the interviewer asked Bedard about that face-off about Crosby, and the first thing Bedard, as an 8-year-old, brings up, he goes, "Yeah, I lost that. It was bad. It was pathetic." About the face-off itself, she's asking about the moment. He's talking about the actual face-off, which he lost. He said in a horrible way, but. Man, this kid, you saw him play some in preseason. Wow, he's got the goods. He looks like he's about 12 years old. And it's just another, we've seen this the last few years with some great guys starting out and living up. And he's probably the next in line at Connor Bedard to live up to the hype, as a young player in the NHL.
I was talking with someone about it last night, the word generational. I feel like we overuse that a lot in football when we're talking about quarterback prospects because we've got so much more exposure. Hockey, I do think, is more judicious with the word, and it shows for a guy like that, for a guy like Connor McDavid, who has been one of the coolest things I've ever watched on skates. It does feel like we got a good hit rate with that idea of generational prospect because Connor seems to fit that mold.
So did you ever forget anything going out into any sport as Little League or as you got older and when it was just football? Because that would be akin in football to forgetting your helmet, basically.
This is the recurring dream I have all the time, is I now, as an adult who haven't played football in a decade, always have a recurring dream where I show up to play a Notre Dame football game and I show up either without my cleats or without my helmet. And my old offensive line coach, Harry Heastate, who's a man I revere, who's as important as any coach I've ever had in my life, is looking at me like, what the hell? I'm looking at them wondering why you're trying to play me now as a 34-year-old who's about 250 pounds, who struggled when he was close to 300 pounds. I'm confused by their strategy. But yeah, I don't have my helmet on the field, and it's like the forgetting your homework dream. It's terrible.
I mean, that was a dream. In reality, he forgot his stick. I mean, that's hilarious. The most important thing he needs out there outside the
cameras on him, and it's your big moment. It's pretty hysterical.
That is amazing.
Speaking about getting ready for a big moment, Jesse, let's get to the third here. The USC coaching staff has taken some interesting tactics ahead of their trip to South Bend this weekend.
Yeah, okay, so USC staffers are spraying water at punt returners during practice in hopes of simulating the rainy environment that allegedly the Trojans are going to face in South Bend. So quick weather report for this weekend. Yeah, let's see. Low around 45 degrees. Chance of rain 50%. So this is the response here, is like, it's going to be slick out here. It's going to be wet. So we're just going to spray you down. I love this visual of the coach just chasing him. Like, is that just absolute comedy?
It's peak college football, man.
Listen, I think the coach is getting joy out of that, of spraying.
Right.
You know?
That's more for him. He's like the guy in Billy Madison spraying the kid. Mister, I don't even know you.
Yeah, you know what they can't replicate? Spray them all you want in sunny and warm weather, okay? Yeah. But, you know, chill it down to 45 or 40 degrees with wind chill and it's a night game. Then get back to me when you've done that.
You know what? I'm praying this forecast.
Yes.
That's true.
Yes, cold.
Yeah, you guys want that. Yeah.
Oh,
yes.
I'll never forget, Jesse. We played in the Sun Bowl against Miami and El Paso, and it was 32 and snowing at kickoff.
Freezing.
And we looked over at it was a slow Tuesday for us. We looked over and we're playing the Miami Hurricanes, and we knew right then and there,
done.
Oh, they don't want to be here.
They were done. You guys crushed them in that game. I am hoping it is cold and rainy for this one Saturday night.
Bring it all on. We hope that it is raining comments, replies, ratings, and reviews in our mentions. Thanks so much. Download, subscribe, rate, review. Have a great evening. Watch Katie Nolan, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.